Get ready, because everything is about to happen suddenly. And I don't say that lightly. I say it because there are certain moments in life that don't announce themselves with certainty. They announce themselves with a feeling, a quiet knowing that arrives before the evidence does. Something you can almost hear beneath the noise of everyday life, if you're willing to become still enough to listen. I feel it in my bones, in the marrow, in the quiet hum underneath everything. And what I'm sensing is this: you have 10 days. 10 days for your entire reality to begin reorganizing itself around a truth you have been circling for a very long time, but have never fully allowed yourself to land in. And I don't mean that your whole world is going to change because of luck, or because the universe suddenly decides to choose you over someone else. I mean that there are moments when shifts inside of you so completely that the outside world has no choice but to slowly reshape itself around the person you've become. Every lasting transformation begins internally, long before anyone else can see it. The roots always grow beneath the surface before the flower ever appears. And because we can't see the roots, we assume nothing is happening, when in reality, the most important work has already begun. These next 10 days are like that. They are not simply 10 ordinary days passing on a calendar. They are 10 opportunities to loosen your grip on the old version of yourself. 10 opportunities to stop rehearsing the same fears you've carried for years. 10 opportunities to finally ask yourself whether the life you've been living was built from your own truth or from beliefs you inherited before you were old enough to question them. So prepare your being, prepare your heart, prepare your mind, prepare your nervous system. Because what is coming isn't going to ask if you're ready. It isn't going to wait until every doubt has disappeared or until every question has been answered. Change rarely waits for certainty. It arrives the way seasons arrive. Quietly at first, then all at once. One day the air feels different. One day the trees begin changing color. One day the snow melts. One day the storm breaks. Looking back, it feels sudden, but the transformation had been unfolding beneath the surface the entire time. Life often works exactly the same way. We spend months believing nothing is changing because we only know how to measure visible progress, while beneath the surface, our beliefs, our identity, our relationships, and our priorities are quietly rearranging themselves into something entirely new. Then one day, an opportunity appears. A conversation changes everything. An unexpected door opens. A chance encounter redirects your future, and everyone calls it luck, when in reality, it was preparation finally meeting, the moment it had been quietly preparing for all along. That's why these 10 days matter so much. They're not asking you to force anything into existence. They're asking you to become someone who doesn't panic when life finally begins answering the prayers you've whispered in private. Because so many people ask for abundance, but feel uncomfortable the moment abundance arrives. They ask for love, but don't trust it when someone genuinely chooses them. They ask for financial freedom, but become anxious the moment more money begins flowing into their lives. They ask to be seen, yet shrink the moment attention finally finds them. Not because they don't want those things, but because their nervous system has spent years believing that struggle is familiar and familiarity feels safer than freedom. So become someone who can stand in the doorway of change without immediately searching for reasons to close it again. Become someone who doesn't mistake peace for boredom, simply because chaos has been your normal for so long. Become someone who doesn't apologize every time life starts becoming easier. Get comfortable with things flowing. Get comfortable with opportunities arriving naturally. Get comfortable with waking up one morning and realizing you no longer feel the constant pressure to prove your worth through exhaustion. Because somewhere along the way we inherited the belief that if something feels easy, it must somehow be less valuable. That success only counts if it hurts. That peace must be earned through years of struggle. That rest is laziness. That receiving is selfish. And that life is supposed to feel heavy almost all of the time. But those are inherited stories, not universal truths. They were passed down from people doing the best they could with the fears they carried, and without realizing it, we've spent years confusing those fears with reality. What if ease isn't something to distrust? What if peace isn't something you earn after surviving enough hardship? What if abundance isn't waiting on the other side of endless suffering, but on the other side of finally believing you're allowed to receive it? What if the greatest shift of your life isn't learning how to fight harder, but learning how to stop fighting yourself? There is another rhythm available to you now, a quieter rhythm, one that doesn't require constant force or endless proving. A rhythm where receiving feels as natural as breathing, where opportunities begin finding you because you're no longer unconsciously pushing them away, where money moves toward you the way water moves downhill. Not because you've manipulated the universe into giving you something special, but because you've finally stopped placing invisible walls in front of every blessing trying to reach you. Water never argues with gravity. It doesn't question whether it deserves to reach the ocean. It doesn't wake up every morning wondering if it's worthy of flowing. It simply follows the path that's already available to it. Imagine what your life would feel like if you trusted your own path with that same quiet confidence. Imagine how much energy would become available if you stopped spending it preparing for disappointment before joy had even arrived. Imagine opening your heart one breath longer every time something good happens, instead of immediately waiting for it to disappear. Imagine allowing yourself to believe, even for a moment, that maybe life isn't trying to test you every single day, that maybe it is trying to meet you halfway, that maybe what you've been asking for has been moving toward you this whole time, while you've unknowingly been standing in front of the door. These 10 days aren't asking you to become someone completely different. They're asking you to remember someone you've always been underneath the fear, underneath the conditioning, underneath the stories you've repeated so many times they've started sounding like your own voice. The life you've been quietly hoping for doesn't begin the day the opportunity arrives. It begins the day your nervous system finally believes it is safe enough to let that opportunity stay. And perhaps that's what these next 10 days are really about. Not chasing miracles, but becoming the kind of person who no longer runs away when the miracle finally knocks. I want to be honest about that, because I think honesty is the only currency that actually matters here. When I imagined receiving large sums of money, my nervous system would freak out. My chest would tighten. My breath would go shallow. Some old part of me would start whispering that I didn't deserve it, that it would be taken away, that visibility was dangerous, that being seen by thousands of people was somehow a threat to my safety. And I carried that for years without even realizing. It was a program running quietly in the background of every decision I made. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say prepare yourself. Because everything is about to happen suddenly, and it begins closing in over the next 10 days. The compression is already starting. You can feel it if you're paying attention. The days feel thinner somehow, more charged, like the air right before a storm. And the only way you are going to be able to receive everything you've been praying for, everything you've been quietly hoping for, in the private hours when no one is watching, is by aligning yourself with your truth. Not your parents' truth, not your culture's truth, not the truth of scarcity that was handed to you before you were old enough to question it, but your truth, the one underneath all the noise. Aligning your nervous system with ease, with authenticity, with the effortless unfolding that is your birthright. Because when you freak out, when you think about receiving large sums of money and your stomach drops, when you think about being seen and your whole body contracts, when you actually receive something you've been asking for, and instead of joy, you feel a strange dread, it is simply because you've been programmed to fear success, programmed so early and so thoroughly that it feels like personality rather than programming. And you are not yet comfortable sitting in the presence of your own success. Your nervous system is misaligned. It is holding a frequency of protection when what it needs now is a frequency of allowance. You are out of alignment, and this is why, even when abundance does come toward you, you find ways to push it away, to sabotage it, to give it back, to make yourself small again. Because small feels familiar, and familiar feels safe, even when familiar is actually a cage. So you can't receive, or if you do receive, it slips through your fingers. Because your hands were never taught how to hold something that good. And this is why, in these 10 days, you must prepare yourself with a kind of devotion. Get comfortable being in a state of receptivity. Get comfortable receiving all of the beautiful fruits that life has been trying to hand you for a long time, while you kept your arms crossed. Get comfortable with this new paradigm, because things are going to be easy now. Things are going to be effortless. There is no more hustling and grinding. There is no more proving your worth through exhaustion. There is no more struggle required as the entry fee for a good life. You can still struggle if you want to. That door remains open. That's always up to you. Some people will keep choosing the old way because it's what they know. But you don't have to. Not anymore. Because we're going to be living in alignment. And living in alignment feels effortless. It feels light. It feels like a held breath finally released. It feels easy. It feels true. Because this is how we are meant to be. This is the original design underneath all the conditioning. It feels good because it is in alignment with who you actually are, underneath who you were told to be. And it's almost hard for me to believe, even now, that I'm comfortable receiving large sums of money, that I'm comfortable being seen by thousands upon thousands upon thousands, millions of people watching, listening, because just a few months ago, my nervous system could not hold that. My nervous system would freak out when I got even a few thousand views. The attention would feel like too much light pouring into a room that had only ever known dim corners. And it's the same with money. I would be so terrified of receiving large sums of it. Terrified, in a way that didn't even make logical sense to me at the time. Of course I wanted it. Of course I wanted to be free from financial insecurity. Of course I didn't want to struggle anymore. Of course, I didn't want to keep living inside that low hum of fear that colors every decision when you don't have enough. And yet, underneath all of that wanting, I was sabotaging myself constantly, quietly, in ways I couldn't even see clearly until much later. I couldn't hold on to abundance. It would come, and then it would leave, like sand slipping between fingers that didn't know how to cup themselves properly. And I was always trying to figure out the how. How am I going to make the money? How am I going to make an impact? What is my purpose? Spinning in the mind, endlessly calculating, endlessly strategizing, getting so caught up in the mechanics that I missed the actual invitation. We're stepping into the year of the fire horse in less than a month now, and the energy is already potent, already stirring beneath the surface of ordinary days. The last little bit of shedding from the year of the snake, 2025, is being let go of right now, in these very days. And I can feel this deeply within my own life, within the choices I'm making, within the ground, shifting quietly beneath my feet. And I think collectively, we are all experiencing some version of this, a peeling away of what no longer fits. So prepare yourself, because again, everything is about to happen suddenly, in the next 10 days specifically. This is not a vague someday. This is a window, a real and specific window. Fire horse energy is rapid, quick movement, fiery action energy. It does not wait around for you to feel ready in the conventional sense. It moves whether you've prepared or not. So prepare yourself, because these next 10 days are going to be magical. They are going to ask you to be brave in quiet ways, to receive instead of deflect, to stay instead of sabotage, to let the good thing land instead of finding a reason to distrust it. Hold it gently, not as pressure, but as permission. Permission to prepare, permission to soften, permission to finally receive. And I want to say something else, because I don't think it gets said enough. This preparation I keep speaking of is not about doing more. It is not another item on a to-do list, stacked on top of an already exhausted nervous system. It is the opposite of doing. It is a returning, a remembering. And what you are remembering is that you were never actually broken. You were simply trained. Trained by circumstance. Trained by scarcity you witnessed as a child. Trained by every moment someone bigger than you flinched at money, or flinched at attention, or flinched at their own light. And you absorbed that flinch as if it were your own. You carried someone else's fear in your own body for years, decades even, and mistook it for caution, for wisdom, for realism, when really it was just inherited contraction. So when I say prepare your nervous system in these 10 days, what I actually mean is begin to loosen that inherited grip. Begin to ask yourself in quiet moments, is this fear even mine? Did I choose this belief, or did it choose me before I was old enough to have a say? And just asking that question, just holding that inquiry gently, without needing an immediate answer, starts to create space. And space is exactly what allowance requires. You cannot pour abundance into a fist. A fist has to open first, and that opening is slow and then suddenly fast. The same way everything about this window is slow and then suddenly fast. You'll feel like nothing is happening, and then everything happens at once. That's the nature of these compressed timelines. That's the nature of fire energy. It builds quietly underground, and then it breaks through the surface all at once. And so many people miss their own breakthrough because they were looking for a gradual staircase when what was actually coming was a door flung open. So don't miss it. Stay awake to these 10 days. Stay tender toward yourself inside them. When the old fear rises, and it will rise, because old patterns don't leave without one last performance, don't fight it. Don't shame yourself for still feeling it. Just notice it, the way you'd notice weather passing through. Oh, there's the fear again. There's the old contraction, and let it pass without organizing your whole day around it. Because the goal was never to never feel fear again. The goal is to stop being ruled by it, to let it visit without letting it drive. And this is what I had to learn slowly with money, slowly with visibility, slowly with the growing reach of my own voice. I had to let the fear visit, and then gently, without drama, return to alignment, return to breath, return to the simple truth that I am allowed to have good things. I am allowed to be seen doing good things. I am allowed to receive without immediately needing to earn it through suffering first. And once I actually believed that, not as a slogan, but as a felt sense in my body, everything did start moving differently. Opportunities that used to feel like they were happening to other people started arriving at my own door. And I want that same shift for you. I want you to feel, sometime in these next 10 days, a moment where something lands, and instead of your stomach dropping in dread, it just lands. Softly, like it was always supposed to arrive, like you finally built a home sturdy enough to hold it. That's what we're preparing for. That's what all of this is for. Not hype, not urgency for urgency's sake, but a genuine, felt readiness. A nervous system that has practiced staying open long enough that when the real thing comes, it doesn't slam the door out of habit. And I think about how different life looks now compared to even a year ago. How the version of me back then would not have believed I could stand here, having built something from nothing but a feeling and a willingness to trust it. And I share that not to boast. I genuinely don't care about being seen as impressive. I share it because I remember exactly what it felt like to not believe this was possible, to read messages like this one and think, that's nice for her, but that's not going to be my story. And I want to gently interrupt that thought, if it's arising in you right now. Because it was my story before it was my story. Meaning there was a version of me who also doubted it, who also flinched, who also sabotaged good things out of old fear. And the only difference between that version of me and this one is that I kept choosing again and again, in small unremarkable moments, to lean toward alignment instead of away from it, to lean toward receiving instead of deflecting. And you can make that same choice. Right now, today, in whatever these 10 days bring you. You don't need a dramatic life change. You simply need to notice the next moment abundance knocks, in whatever small form it takes. A compliment, an opportunity, an unexpected bit of ease. And instead of shrinking from it, let yourself stay open one breath longer than usual. That's the whole practice. Staying open one breath longer, and then one breath longer than that, until openness becomes the default instead of the exception. So prepare yourself. These 10 days are not asking for perfection. They are asking for practice, gentle, imperfect, repeated practice at letting the good things land. And if you take nothing else from these words, take this. The version of your life you have been quietly hoping for is not far away. It is not years away. It is not some distant reward waiting at the end of a long road of proving yourself worthy. It is 10 days away. It is as close as the next breath you let yourself fully exhale. And the only real work left is the work of letting your nervous system believe that. Letting your body catch up to what your soul has already decided. Because the soul moves fast. The soul already knows. It's the body that needs convincing. It's the body that needs the repeated, gentle evidence that it is safe now, that it is allowed now, that receiving will not be punished the way it may have been in some old chapter of your story. So be patient with your body, even as you feel the urgency of these 10 days pressing in. Urgency and patience are not opposites here. You can feel the acceleration of the timeline while still moving through it with tenderness toward yourself. That is exactly the balance this window is teaching. Fast on the outside, soft on the inside. And if today feels ordinary, if nothing dramatic has happened yet, trust that the underground work is still happening. Roots don't announce themselves before the bloom. They work quietly in the dark. And then one day there is a flower, and it looks sudden even though it wasn't sudden at all. It was 10 days, or however many days, of quiet preparation finally reaching the surface. So let today be one of those quiet days if it needs to be. Let tomorrow be one too, if that's what's required. And trust that the compression is doing its work, whether or not you can see the evidence yet. Because so much of this is unseen until it isn't. So much of alignment happens beneath your own awareness until one day you wake up and notice you're simply different. Lighter, easier, less braced for impact, more willing to let good things stay instead of immediately preparing for their departure. And that shift, when it comes, will feel almost anticlimactic, almost quiet, because true alignment rarely arrives with fireworks. It arrives more like a held breath finally released, more like a shoulder you didn't know was tense finally dropping. And that quiet release is worth more than any dramatic sign could ever be. So watch for the quiet signs in these 10 days. The small moments of unexpected ease, the conversation that flows without effort, the idea that arrives fully formed instead of forced, the invitation that shows up right when you needed it. These are not coincidences. These are the early evidence of the alignment you've been cultivating. And each time you notice one, let yourself actually receive the noticing. Don't rush past it the way we've all been trained to rush past good things in search of the next thing to worry about. Pause. Let it register. Let your nervous system log it as proof. See, I am safe receiving this. See, good things can land and stay. And the more evidence you gather in these 10 days, the easier the next reception becomes. And the one after that, until receiving, is simply who you are, rather than something you have to talk yourself into each time. I love you all, and I mean that with my whole chest. Thank you for being here. Thank you for walking through this with me. I'll see you in the next one.